What's good people, it's Kay, and today we're reacting to RWBY Volume 8, Chapter 11. I feel quite giddy, just because I don't know what to expect. All these people on Twitter, RWBY, just talking shit. I'm not amused.
If anyone tries anything,
Mantel's gone.
you have 1 hour to respond.
I hope you live up to the title I gave you.
Oh.
Of course he's not going to do it.
So what? He's bluffing
What?
with the whole city?
It may finally push the kids to see reason.
Who cares?
Good.
Lovely.
You're here.
Lovely sentiment.
I need a squad of drones in standby to drop the payload.
Sir,
Yeah,
what for?
he's actually doing it.
I believe I was clear in the broadcast.
He sure was.
If they give me a reason, I'm going to remove Mantle from the equation. This is how we save Atlas.
You call this saving Atlas? Doing Salem's job for her?
Mutiny.
I believed in you.
Insubordination.
I thought we could
Stop
work
this.
towards something better. But now you're throwing it all away.
If you don't shut your mouth, I'm going to do it for you.
If this is what gets the children to cooperate, then it's worth it.
I don't like this either, but the top priority is...
Do you even believe what you're saying anymore? Do any of you believe in anything?
Go off.
I used to wear this rank with pride. Now I see it for what it really is. A collar.
For a second.
You want a collar? Fine. I'll throw this traitor in the brig, where he belongs.
Oh, I see what's happening here. I see what's happening here. Winter, you ain't slick.
Okay, Ironwood wants Penny. Otherwise, Mantle is done for. So, how do we stop him?
Pearl and Robin are still in his custody. And May said Atlas security drones are watching the crater. So, they're tracked too.
And Salem isn't going to stay gone for much longer.
So then, it's impossible.
See? If Miss Hero, with all the answers, doesn't have an answer, then we have ours.
Shut up.
Okay, then why don't you just leave?
Can we please
Can't be
just give
bothered.
each other a chance?
Love it.
I know it's not with Salem anymore. And Ozpin is back.
RWBY, that's such a mood.
Doubt and worry and distrust, it isn't getting us anywhere.
Then nothing has changed! We're in the exact same place we were yesterday! Arguing over what to do while the kingdom waits to die.
I'm glad you're all right.
And?
Sorry. No matter how much I boost you, they won't go away.
Don't apologize. I got hurt doing what I always do. Just another ditzy move from Nora.
That's not true.
How would you know? We were supposed to be a team, but that didn't matter to you. When things went wrong, you pushed us away. You shut people out so you don't have to feel things that are hard.
You're right. I should be apologizing. To both of you. When we lost Oscar and things got difficult, I said terrible things. I've been so angry at myself for not being as good as the Aesops, happened at Robin's rally, for losing the lamp. I thought if I just focused on working harder, getting stronger, that I wouldn't fail. But my biggest failing was as a teammate and as a partner.
Come on, Ren. You just... Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ren,
Such a himbo.
I mean, why didn't you say anything? So we failed as a team, but we succeed as a team too.
I was the one holding us back. Not John, not you, me.
Well, you're wrong. All I do is make dumb jokes and smash things with a hammer.
What? That's not true. You put everything you have into what you do. You support everyone around you. You help without worrying about how it might hurt. And that's what I love about... That's why I
Continue.
love you.
When my mom ran from the Grim and left me behind, you found me. We became Ren and Nora. But I realized on this mission apart, I don't know who just Nora is. And if I'm ever going to find out,
Oh, hang on a minute.
I have to do it alone.
Oh, I wasn't expecting this.
Because I've always loved you, Lyran. And that pretty head on your shoulder seems like it's doing a lot better. But I still gotta get mine sorted out before I can be the partner you need. Is that okay?
It's definitely okay.
Stop. I love that. There's so many feelings.
Cameras on a loop.
He's really gonna do it.
Not if we stop him first.
Mm-hmm. Aw, shit.
There might be a better way.
I'm telling you, there isn't.
Well, this isn't just about you. It's about everyone.
I'm going straight up to the academy, and I am ending this.
Or we fail and people get killed.
He deserves this!
Listen, I get it. You are hurting. You've been hurting for a long time. But let's stop pretending that what you're trying to do here is for anyone but yourself. Clover was a lot of things. You respected him. But I gotta tell ya, I think you're the better huntsman. Not because you were the one who walked away, but because you were the one who was fighting for what was right. Don't go telling me that's
You think so? Was that Winter and Marrow, perhaps?
You know, that giant hound kicked us around like we were nothing. But Blake said you and the Chinese managed to take it down. Still having to one-up your big sis, huh?
Stop this.
I'll tell you what it was underneath.
Yeah.
You
things, then
I wouldn't worry about that.
that's what happened to Mom.
She said it. She said it. Oh.
When I saw its eyes, I knew. Salem used to kill people with silver eyes, like Maria. But she's always wanted me alive. Why would that change unless when she met Mom, she learned she could do something new?
Ruby,
We shouldn't lie to ourselves. I wasted our time getting Amity up, thinking help would come, but it didn't. And Amity
It still might.
fell.
You never know.
I was being childish.
you were being optimistic. Look, blind optimism isn't great, but no optimism means we've already lost. We need hope. We need to take risks.
But mine didn't work.
It's still got a warning out. Ruby, they're not called sure things. They're called risks. And in case you didn't notice, my plan for Mantle didn't work either. But we got Oscar back. And did a lot more that was never in the plan. Mom took a risk the day she left. And I don't think it went the way she wanted it to.
No.
But she's still my hero.
Oh.
Hurry!
The fuck? Is it? Oh.
No longer.
She's trying to leave.
Penny, please! I must open the vault! I do not want... Ruby! Stop me! Penny! I must open the vault.
Oh, we're doing this.
Self-terminate.
Are we? Oh my.
I've got her! What do we do?
I mean... Is this that OP Penny that I was talking about?
Self-terminate!
Come on.
Do something! Penny, please! Tell me how to help you!
Kill me.
See, that's what I was worried about.
Kill me.
It's not what I want to hear.
Make sure the power goes to you. Please.
That is not gonna happen.
I cannot fight it! Yes, you can! It's just a part of you, remember? If you were only a machine, you never could have fought back for this long. She's right. She's right! Shine! Mr. Aura!
Huh? How interesting. Well, how about that? It feels like a band-aid, but
Did
no.
I stop the virus?
No. It's still there. But you've got an aura, Penny. A soul. That's who you are. Our friend. Not a machine.
Alright. Nice.
I think you're wrong, by the way. I highly doubt you're in the same place you started. I mean, yeah, you guys have been getting your asses kicked.
Emerald.
My fault, but like,
Stop it.
you're at war. You're gonna take hits. Look, I'm just going to be super pissed if you all finally decide to give up the moment I switch sides.
Wow.
Switch sides.
She said it.
Aww.
I don't believe this.
Whatever.
Or like, whatever. Now answer Cinder, please.
You all wouldn't mind. I really think Ozpin would like to say something.
Oh. Suppose it's about that time.
I was recently reminded of an old fairy tale. A young girl flees the consequences of a choice to a magical place. But, having never learned from her initial failure, she only succeeds in spreading it. I failed all of you. I should have trusted you with the truth. You should never have run the day you discovered it.
It was rough. But I think after everything that's happened here, we understand. Trust is a risk.
And I hope it's a risk you can take on me again.
I can still feel it fighting me.
I can't just keep amping her forever.
We can't keep Ironwood waiting.
Ah! Guys, she has to go to the vault.
But she doesn't have to go alone. Say it. Go on.
It's actually a risk we haven't considered. She'll do it.
The Academy enters.
Here we go. Okay, so we're all gonna be crashing into each other at the vault, it seems. Okay. Everything we've talked about this season, all the themes and ideas, all the subtext, the things we've thought but didn't say out loud, it feels like it all came around in this episode. This was a really important episode in the scheme of the season, but also as far as the bigger picture of the series is concerned. It was loaded with deep sentiment. It was a script with great care woven into the conversations and interactions which anchor it. It took me a few goes to settle on how I feel about this episode. My first reaction was that I didn't love seeing an entire episode of conversations at this point in the game. I still enjoyed everything that went into it, but I had gone into it myself expecting to see more movement, and the lack of it colored my first impression. But that was my first impression. Every subsequent viewing after that, I was in my feelings. And the more I've seen this episode, the more I've come to appreciate it, the more these moments and conversations have sunken into my mind. And I know it doesn't do a ton of good to say all that after the reaction I recorded, but I hope that this review can serve as a kind of reflection on how I've come around in my thinking, as well as the usual me trying to give some insights on what the episode actually gave us. So yeah, this episode is a bit imbalanced, but I love what it means, what it contains, what it represents. This is an episode about love in its different forms, and because it is, for the most part, a love letter to quite a few of these characters. And if there's one thing we know about love, it's that it's never clean. It's disruptive and exhausting in the same way that it's also uplifting and exciting. You know, these young folks are characters who are notorious for struggling to communicate with each other. It's a characteristic of the show which has been noted a lot this season, and even over the prior 2 seasons. The simple fact though is that for good or ill, whatever your opinion, I think Volume 8 and the Atlas arc as a whole needed these characters to come together and speak their truths at some point. We needed an episode like this, a little something to settle our souls before we move any further. It matters a little that we're having this happen so close to the end, but at the same time it's also kind of refreshing. You know, I remember towards the end of Kill la Kill, which is one of my all-time favorite anime, that our heroes got together, bonded, had some tea. They just set aside a bit of time to relax their minds before they were about to face down the final battle. The tone of this RWBY episode is different to that Kill la Kill one, but I think the comparison still works. Another example is every Mass Effect game, you know? At least in my playthroughs, I had Shepard and Liara with a big romantic scene just before they were about to get to the final mission. So I think the mentality behind this RWBY episode is, aside from the love letter part of it, is saying that however this story ends, it all hinges on what comes next, so it's best to put everything on the table while we still can. But speaking of talking, discussion of themes doesn't usually get more on the nose than it does in this episode. I mean, risk. The meaning of risk. To love is a risk, to trust is a risk, to run from the risk is a risk in its own right. Honesty is a risk, but one which has never been more crucial to take. So for this analysis, I want to focus on 3 scenes in particular. Start with RWBY and Yang. This outpouring of regret and vulnerability, a realization of what true hopelessness looks like. It's a scene with the story's avatar of hope, Ruby Rose, admitting a loss of hope, which is rarely, if ever, happened with her. But even by acknowledging failure, and even by coming to a conclusion about their mother's possible fate, honesty is what rules this conversation. What can we actually learn from the hard truths and the worst failures? To Yang, Summer's failure doesn't change the way she feels about her, and her own failure, RWBY's failure, those haven't changed her feelings about what they've all been working for. And what I get out of what she says to RWBY is that just because things went left for their mother in a bad situation, that doesn't mean she shouldn't have tried, or that she shouldn't have acted on whatever feelings drove her there. And just because these plans for Mantle seemingly failed, that also doesn't mean she and RWBY shouldn't have tried. It stands out as an especially nice bit of dialogue work, in an episode which is pretty strong in the dialogue department. Now, line writing has come a long way in this series, even from just a few years ago. Let's shift to Ren and Nora. I was surprised by how this turned out, but also very happy with it too. This scene is one of a conclusion about shifting focus and perspective. These two have always found solace in each other, but driven by different impulses. You know, I've been rewatching Volume 4 lately, and it's worth throwing back to when they met, because Ren was the center of their beginnings. Their storyline in Volume 4 was his storyline, and she supported him in every sense of the word. And it never felt unusual because we simply believed that version of Nora would always be who she was. Last season was the first time she'd showed us so much of herself and what she was really thinking, and it clearly started something new for her. So it was kind of inevitable that she would run into a moment like this, and that she would decide to make some kind of significant change. The alternative might have been pleasant, but more as a sell, and she might never have had a chance to find the answers to her questions. Ren's situation was similar. He had more of an idea of who he was, but his attempts to reinforce it took him down a more withdrawn path until the evolution of his semblance made him realize the importance of everything around him. I wonder how Nora's self-discovery will culminate. It's gonna be interesting. The final major scene, the big schmoz with everyone in the courtyard, may seem too sprawling for this analysis, but it can actually be boiled down pretty simply. Everything that goes into it is just the culmination of strands we've seen all throughout this episode, this season, and last season. The old favorites like trust and choice and fear, and some of this season's newer threads like personhood, failure, consequence. Again, this episode is important precisely because it brings all these things together and examines them all at once. By dwelling on everything and filling the canvas, you are rewarded with clarity and the way forward becomes obvious. Rather than rolling a dice, you give yourself a chance to choose the cards you draw and retake some of that control that everyone's favorite general is so fond of. And now we get to the rest. It was really sad to see Fiona crying as she was watching the ultimatum announcement. Ironwood should go down just for that. It was interesting to see how the Aesops were taking the reality of the ultimatum. Marrow accepted, of course. You have Vine trying to apply logic to a situation where so little exists. You have Elm, who seems to be starting to doubt the situation, despite still feeling a need to fall in line. And of course there's Harriet doing her best millennial impression with that "who cares" line, pissing me off as per usual. It'll be kinda interesting to see how they fit into this final equation. They'll probably come through, but I'm still giving them the hard side eye. Marrow has such a big heart. I liked his line about the rank becoming a collar, and Ironwood was really about to wipe him out. Not that him doing so would have surprised me at this point, but it still would have been crazy. And that was some quick thinking on Winter's part too. She made up her mind, came up with a plan on the fly, and was agile enough to interfere in time and save Mara's life. Of course, I'm saying all this with the understanding that she's taken him away so they can both go rogue and come up with a way to stop Ironwood. You know, just making sure we're on the level here. John has had such big himbo energy ever since he got his new look. You know, it suits his role as the third wheel of his little group, and I love it. I like how the Ren and Nora scene acknowledges a history that we can actually see going back. I remember when Team RWBY was split up, one of the critiques that I would always see floating around was that we'd barely seen their character dynamics at work, and yet the show at that point was implying histories and relationships and character depths that we hadn't really seen for ourselves. In short, these four girls were really not interacting that much, and then the show decided to split them up. And I can see where that critique came from. I mean, back in the first 2 seasons, I was definitely one of the people who didn't appreciate that we were seeing so much Jean all the time, and the depth thing also had some merit as well. But regardless, the Ren and Nora story is an example of calling upon a history where the depth is in evidence, a history that we can see very clearly when we go back through it. Again, the only reason I had the idea to compare these ideas is because I've been watching Volume 4 again. That aside, I do think it's quite a quirk of the timeline. They had that kiss on election night, like, what, less than a week ago in the chronology. It's true enough that circumstances changed super drastically during that time, but I'm just transposing their relationship into the real world, getting together and then amicably separating within the space of a week or two, and then getting back together down the line. You know, I'm sure we've all known couples like that at some point or another, and maybe you're in one, and hey, I hope it's great. With these two though, I'm glad that we got such a positive and healthy development for this relationship. I remain largely unmoved by the Crow-Robin stuff this season, but I like how their conversation just sort of adds to the melting pot of the episode. Robin basically said it all, so we don't really need to unpack it too much, but I'll add to it by saying that I personally do see love in Crow. It's a love which has scarred over into despair, and it's not just about what happened to Clover or this business with Ironwood, but with everything he's ever lost. You might say he's in the kind of sunken place that Ren could possibly have fallen into with more years and loss under his belt. Another pretty clear implication is the idea that the elevator doors opened and they ran into a now rogue Mara and Winter. I enjoy seeing the team names that Twitter has come up with for their little group. Requiem is my favorite. You know, it has a fitting meaning for their mission and for the moment. Plus, it's just a cool word. I liked the courtyard scene a lot, and part of that is down to how it was staged. Everything was so centralized, and at times it felt like a stage play. Penny tries to fly off with Ruby hanging from her waist, but then you also get Ren and Blake and Emerald using the range of their weapons, along with Weiss and Jean's semblances, all being used together to bring her down. Again, the staging of this action is just sort of flowing with the rhythm of a play. And then Penny asks to die, which is not the first time she's been struck by fatalistic thinking this season. She offered to give herself up to Salem. She's expressed all along how much she doesn't want to be the Winter Maiden, and now this. I like the idea in theory of Ruby becoming a maiden, and I don't know, I have a feeling that at least one of Team RWBY will be a maiden before the series ends, but I don't believe that this particular transfer will come to pass. I still think Penny will survive the season, one way or another, and that we'll see her again when it comes time for the final battle. I may be proven wrong, but I just find it hard to believe that she would die in Season 3, then come back and just die again. By the way, it's my personal loose belief that we're going to Vacuo, and then we'll be finishing the series with Vale and Beacon for the final battle. Vacuo's next, after all, we know this, but there's still a lot of unfinished business with Vale, and short of going back to the Land of Darkness, which is currently devoid of anything, I don't see much else to visit in between. Back to this courtyard scene. Quick thinking, applying the theory of aura to keep the virus at bay. It's one of those things where you're just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I take back what I said last time about Emerald's interactions with the rest of the group. I found these moments with her to be quite delightful, really. The framing of the shots she's in is really effective at making her the outsider. Her monologue was really considered and heartfelt too, in her own way. You know, it came with a typical lack of tact and grace, but that's part of why the moment is so enjoyable. I also like that she seems to have really taken a shine to Oscar. You might have seen the seeds of that in the last episode. He did vouch the hardest for her to join them, but I think it's pretty clear now that she seems to appreciate him and his way of thinking. It's interesting as well that out of everyone assembled here, this kid, this reincarnation of Ozpin, would be the one she gravitates to and trusts the most. And as much as it's interesting, it makes sense too. Oscar's learnt a lot from his experiences, one of those learnings being how to forgive. So yeah, last week, all I wanted to see was Cinder and this new Emerald interacting, but now I'm very curious to see how much of a relationship she can form with these people, Oscar most of all. And speaking of Oz, it's good that we can now close this loop of distrust between him and the heroes. You know, if this is to be the episode where we put everything on the table, then it needs Oz to be brought back into the fold. Not to the high level or the pedestal that he was on before, but his interactions with Oscar this season have done enough that our heroes are willing to take another chance on him. Trust is a risk, after all. And so our final plans take the stage. Ironwood wants Penny alone, but there's no way Ruby and Co are just going to stand by and let that happen. I want to see how they're going to work around this. I also don't think they would trust Ironwood to be alone either. He must have some role for the remaining Aesops to play, but I mean, those three and the state they're in, going up against all of the squad, it's going to be even worse for them than the Team RWBY fight last season. The potential Team Requiem may have a part to play, and of course they just had to show us Cinder and Watts linking up with Neo, so I'm also interested in what happens next from a structural perspective as well, how this RWBY manages to pull off all these moving pieces. I keep an open mind for the sake of whatever objectivity I can muster, but I also have faith in these folks. They've consistently done well when it's come to their creativity in this arc, and I have no doubt that these final 3 episodes are going to be just loaded with it. In closing, Risk is an episode which allows everyone, and all of us included, to take one last deep breath, one last long moment before we fall once more onto the breach. It gives us a chance to look on all we've seen and experienced throughout this arc, and even reaching back far before we ever set our sights on Atlas. Fear, doubt, hopelessness, love, truth, trust. A love letter, a reflection, a clearing of the air, taking a chance on someone else, accepting the possibility and pain and failure for the sake of doing what's right. This episode is about all of these things and more. And if you think that this episode slows the season down to a crawl, then you would be right. But I would also say that the end of this season can't ramp into full gear without an episode like this. And now, the final act of the Atlas story is upon us. Sometimes, it's worth it all to risk the fall. That's how I'm feeling. Like I said, this episode just reinforces the benefits of absorbing a text as much as possible before forming your conclusions. And that's not a shot at anyone or any particular style of reaction, it's an admission of my own shortcomings. I really struggle at reviewing anything after only one sitting, and I respect those who can hammer it out as easily as they do. You know, music, shows, movies, they've always been tough for me. I need time and multiple tries to work things out. Books and games are a bit easier, but I think that's because I find them more immersive. But you know, if I had sat there and reviewed this episode after only one look at it, it certainly wouldn't have been as glowing as the review I've given. Doing these videos this way is just the best method for me. And it's also the way I used to review back when I was only doing writing for them. The analysis to the observations to the closing statement, that's straight out of how I structured those old written posts. So these RWBY reaction review videos are largely a best of both worlds thing for me as well, and I'm practicing doing the first reaction thing on series that I haven't shared with the channel yet, because when I branch out into including those series on the channel, it's going to be impossible to mass produce the same style of videos that I do for RWBY. So the point of that ramble is just to say that I'm glad I took some more time to really digest this episode and come to a more honest, thorough, just a conclusion made in good faith. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.